Well, at this stage of their lives, Gen Z has managed to rack up more debt than the generations prior. And unfortunately, that financial burden could have long-standing and devastating long-term effects for their financial well-being. Now, inflation has a lot to do with this. Remember, there's a massive surge in food prices, housing prices, and more Americans are turning to credit cards in order to make ends meet, which is just devastating all around. Now, the average credit card balance, though, for 22 to 24-year-olds was $2,834 in the last quarter of 2023, compared with the average inflation-adjusted balance of $2,248 in the same period in 2013, according to new data from credit reporting agency TransUnion. Now, for some, that might not seem like that big of a deal. It really depends on where you are in life, and if you're in your peak earning years, a few $100 increase in debt for Gen Z, not that big of a deal. Except you also have to keep in mind that they also have student loan debt to deal with, rising prices for basic essentials they're gonna continue having to deal with, and consumer debt in the United States overall is at a record high. So seeing younger generations start off with an even bigger hole than previous generations doesn't really give me peace of mind here. Now, younger people in debt are more likely to default as well, and a higher debt balance also means that debtors will hold off on all sorts of life milestones, including marriage, having kids. The median annual wage for recent college graduates was $60,000 in 2023, a little change from the $58,858 in 2020, according to the Federal Reserve of New York. And so when you consider that the wages haven't really increased that much and their debt has increased a little bit already, then keep in mind, what rent is like, what inflation is like. For instance, the median rent in the United States was $1,987 as of January, which was a 22% increase over the past 4 years, according to research from Rent. It's an online rental marketplace, so they're able to kind of keep track on how much rent has increased in recent years or recent months. And so the fundamentals of the economy are just not great for younger people. Their salary isn't keeping up with inflation at all. Their wages aren't keeping up with inflation. But further compounding the debt problem is the fact that qualifying for credit cards and loans is easier than ever. It really is. And I'm sure a lot of you have noticed it if you ever shop online, and there's usually a baked in layaway program, right? Where you can just apply for payments for something you're buying online. Well, that has led to an explosion in debt among consumers, but it's also led to an increase in defaults because of the ease in which people are getting qualified for these loans.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth, as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you.
And look, at the same time, I feel terrible because people aren't making enough money to afford the essentials, the basics, food and housing, for instance. And so it's not like you have like a group of people who are being super irresponsible. It's that people are unable to keep up with inflation. And it's gonna be more pronounced with younger people who are just entering the job market and aren't in their peak earning years. So let's take a look at this graph. This graph was shared by the Wall Street Journal, and it kind of shows you the difference between millennials, which are represented by the orange line, and Gen Z, which are represented by the green line. So in 2021, credit companies loosened the qualifications for those who could get credit cards, and more people ended up opening credit card accounts as a result. And Gen Z ended up opening up credit cards at a faster rate than other generations during the pandemic, including millennials, as you can see by that orange line representing them. The green represents Gen Z, and nearly 5% of consumers 27 or younger had opened at least one new credit card account in March of 2020. According to Vantage Score, which is keeping track of this, in August of 2020, 5.46% of Gen Z opened new credit cards, while 2.95% of millennials did. And that trend has unfortunately translated to a greater use of credit overall. Gen Z benefited in the beginning from this. So, at first they noticed that their credit scores increased because the way credit scores are calculated is kind of messed up. Like you have to have credit cards, you have to have a line of credit, and you have to use your credit and pay off those credit cards or make payments, dutifully in order to increase your credit score. So in the beginning, Gen Z started like reaping the benefits of that. Okay, they have credit, they're using their credit. In the beginning, they were able to pay off their credit cards relatively easily because there were businesses closed at the time. Remember, this is March of 2020. Coronavirus hits the global economy. Businesses shut down, you have nowhere to really spend your money, and you're also getting some bolstered unemployment from the federal government. Obviously that was limited, but that was a nice chunk of change. Some stimulus from the multiple economic stimulus packages that were passed during the coronavirus pandemic. So in the very beginning it was okay, but then things kind of started to fall apart, especially when high interest rates started to kick in. The drop was most drastic for millennials with credit scores between 660 and 719, whose scores ended up falling by 26 points. Now, Gen Z wasn't far behind. The average credit score change for Gen Z with credit scores above 720 fell 24 points during that time period, according to Credit Karma. Now, this might be part of the reason why we're noticing a shift in the youth vote in America. So if you're noticing that polls indicate that Biden and Trump are splitting the youth vote. Those are voters between 18 and 34 years old. It might have to do with how they're feeling about the economy. And if younger voters are racking up more and more debt because their salaries or their wages aren't keeping up with inflation, and at the same time, you're hearing from the Biden administration over and over again that his economy is incredible. It's something to brag about. It's something that no one should be complaining about. Well, that's going to lead to some resentment among voters, especially if they do not feel that the economy is serving them in the best possible way. And so this is something to keep an eye out for, not only when it comes to Gen Z, but consumer debt overall is exploding right now, and I'm worried about what that means for people's financial health, what it means for what they're able to provide for their families, how they're able to scrape by. And these are the kinds of issues that I don't think the Biden administration is paying enough attention to. Why has consumer debt exploded if the economy is doing so well? I don't see a lot of Americans running around wasting money on nonsense. I see a lot of Americans struggling to pay for gas, for groceries, for housing. These are issues that need to be dealt with. And if they're not, yeah, there are political consequences to pay for it. And I think we're seeing it with that 50-50 split among the youth vote.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.